Every Point Virtual Church. We're so glad that you joined us today. And happy Valentine's Day. What better day to have a service in which we focus on loving our neighbors? And what better way to do that than to play part of an archived service in which we featured the wisdom of Fred Rogers along with speaker Reverend Dr. Linda McCoy.
A neighborhood was a place where at times that you felt worried, scared, unsafe, would take care of you, would provide understanding, safety. That's what the neighborhood was for Fred.
The neighborhood is not a fantasy place where all these different people got together and everything was happily ever after. When you have diverse people together with their different opinions, you have conflict. And that's what happens in the neighborhood. You have conflict, real conflict.
Sometimes we need to struggle with the tragedy to feel the gravity of love.
I want there to be peace in this neighborhood. It's been a hard time for everyone.
Oh, there's Officer Clemens. Hi, Officer Clemens. Come in.
Mr. Rogers, how are you?
Fine. Won't you sit down?
Oh, sure. Just for a moment.
It's so warm, I was just putting some water on my feet.
Oh, it sure is.
Would you like to join me?
That looks awfully enjoyable, but I don't have a towel or anything.
Oh, you share mine.
Okay.
Sure.
Around the country, they didn't want black people to come and swim in their swimming pools. And Fred said that is absolutely ridiculous.
Cool water on a hot day. Love is at the root of everything. All learning, all parenting, all relationships. Love or the lack of it.
Sometimes people are good, and they do just what they should. But the very same people who are good sometimes are the very same people who are bad sometimes. It's funny, but it's true. It's the same, isn't it, for me? And sometimes people get wet, and their parents get upset. But the very same people who get wet sometimes are the very same people who are dry sometimes. It's funny, but it's true. It's the same, isn't it, for me? And sometimes people make noise. They break each other's toys. But the very same people who are noisy sometimes are the very same people who are quiet sometimes. It's funny, but it's true. It's the same, isn't it, for me? And sometimes people get mad and feel like being bad. But the very same people who get mad sometimes are the very same people who are glad sometimes. It's funny, but it's true. It's the same, isn't it, for me and you? Sometimes people are good, and they do just what they should. The very same people who are good sometimes, the very same people who are bad sometimes. It's funny, but it's true. It's the same, isn't it, for me? Isn't it the same for you?
Please pray with me. God, this Valentine's Day, show us how to recognize and focus on our love for others. Help us realize the importance of those that we hold close and our love for them. So often we take for granted the people we hold dearest. Open our hearts and awareness to these special people and how we can expand and express our positive feelings towards them. Let's take a minute each day and acknowledge those we love. Commit to share a story, express a positive feeling, and show the gratitude you have for them for being a part of our lives. Take us to a deeper level of love and appreciation, a level where we see all of our beloved strengths, wisdom, weaknesses, and faults, and show us how to love them all the more for who they truly are. Amen.
Good morning. I'm glad to be here with you and glad you're here with me. When our daughter was small, she sometimes liked to watch Mr. Rogers, and I would often sit down with her. And I'll have to tell you how impressed I was with him and the way he affirmed each and every child, and how he always helped them understand that they were loved just as they were. That was a wonderful gift, and I was impressed by that whole thing. Now, that was before I understood that he was a minister. He was an ordained minister and ordained to the ministry of TV, where he was trying to make a difference and affirm the goodness and respect and acceptance of all people at all time. And that was really an important thing. When I think about the song that opened the neighborhood, the show, Won't You Be My Neighbor, I can't think about that without thinking about a Bible passage that talks about how we understand being a neighbor and who our neighbor is. This one is found in Luke's Gospel, and this is how it reads. A teacher of the law came up and tried to trap Jesus. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to receive eternal life? Jesus answered him, what do the scriptures say? How do you interpret them? The man answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. You're right, Jesus replied. Do this and you will live. But the teacher of the law wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? Well, then Jesus did what he most often did, and that was he told a story. And the story he told is what we refer to as the Good Samaritan story. And this is how this whole thing happened. A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers and beaten up and left for dead. Two religious types of folks come by at two different times. They see the man, they walk as far away from him as they can, and they hurry on down the road to get to wherever they're going. And then along came another man who was called a Samaritan. Now you need to understand that at that time Samaritans were the outcasts of society. Nobody would go through the land that they inhabited, and they would avoid Samaritans at all costs. But here comes a Samaritan, and he noticed the man who had been beaten and robbed, and he went to him. He bandaged his wounds. He put the man on his animal and led the man on the animal to an inn. There he paid the innkeeper for taking care of him and promised that if more was owed, he would pay that when he came back. When he finished the story, Jesus asked the scholar, which one of these acted like the neighbor toward the man attacked by the robbers? The man answered, the one who was kind to him. Then Jesus told him, you go and do the same. In other words, he was commending this outcast as the model for how to be a good neighbor. So enough about the Bible story. What about our own stories? Who do we consider to be our neighbors? Of course, I think when we start out, at least we think about our immediate neighborhood and who our neighbors are there. Now, Mike and I have lived in our neighborhood for 40 plus years now, and it's been a pretty stable neighborhood. Well, Mr. Rogers practiced what it was like to be a good neighbor in his neighborhood. In that documentary, they talk about how kind Mr. Rogers was and how he loved and affirmed every single person with whom he worked. For example, there was one member of the team who was gay, and Mr. Rogers knew that. And he knew that he was loved by Mr. Rogers and affirmed and accepted just the way he was. And this was at a time before the LGBTQ community was accepted to the degree that it is now. And he also was at a time when racial inequality was a huge issue. It's not resolved yet today, but that one scene where the two of them are in that wading pool, cooling their feet, was a really remarkable kind of thing. He was really inclusive to the nth degree. You know, as I observed that scene yet today again, It reminded me of something happened when I was a child. I have no idea how old I was. I don't know what prompted this. I don't know whether it's an issue or if I asked a question, or I have no idea. But I remember a time when my mom went to the refrigerator and got out an egg that had a brown shell and an egg that had a white shell. And she pointed out to me that they were two different colors. And then she broke each egg open and put it in a bowl and pointed out to me then how the insides were very much alike. That made a huge impression on me. And that was the kind of thing Mr. Rogers taught through his words and deeds. But I know and you know that the world is far different today than it was then. Our neighborhood is not just the people around us. Our neighborhood is the world, because we live in a global society these days. And the people who are our neighbors are people who speak a different language than we do, who have a different ethnicity, who have a very different culture and background than we do. They sometimes live in very, very difficult circumstances where they're dealing with injustice and violence and poverty and poor health. So in this world, it's much more difficult when we ask the question, who is my neighbor? Because it's not quite as easy an answer as it used to be in days gone by. In doing research for this message, I came upon an article, and I will not pronounce her name correctly, but it's by Cecilia Gonzalez Andrea. And it's entitled this: "We often ask, who is my neighbor? Why does the answer always surprise us?" Now, the author shared that she was a refugee child who came from Havana to Miami. And she said when she was in Havana, there was this community around her, family and friends who supported her and made her feel safe and good about herself. Though when she came to Miami, she was described as an alien. And she said that she felt detached and disconnected and displaced. And she then goes ahead to talk about the story of the Good Samaritan. And she makes a connection where she says that loving neighbor equates to loving God, and that loving God equates to loving neighbor. She goes on to talk about the fact that in Spanish, there's only one, there are 3 words for neighbor, while in English there's only 1 word. And she talked about the Royal Spanish Academy that does this definition: one human being in relation to another, understood through the concept of human solidarity. Now, this definition has the understanding that you and I share with everybody in this world the same kind of humanity. We are all human beings. We come from the same thing. The author wrote this: "It often stands in for the word human and helps us see the neighbors as just me, just us, with slight variations." Well, think about that. If our neighbors are just us with slight variations, how do we go about loving them? How do we extend that? The story of the Good Samaritan tells us what we need to do. It tells us that we need to notice people. We need to see and pay attention. And that's something I have to admit I don't do very well. Sometimes I look past people or past situations instead of really looking at and trying to pay attention. And when we look at, then it costs from us something that we need to do to help. It helps us step out, and we all have the capacity to help others in one way or another. There's another plus I've discovered to looking not past people, but really at them and noticing and paying attention. And that is, it gets us outside ourselves. I don't know about you, but I know that sometimes I kind of get into navel gazing. I start to think about my own hurts, my own concerns, my own needs, and I forget to think about other people. But when we do begin to focus on other people, it moves us outward. And then when we come back to thinking about ourselves, we come back, I think, with a healthier perspective and a better perspective. Mr. Rogers said this: "All of us at some time or another need help. Whether we're giving or receiving help, each one of us has something valuable to bring to this world. That's one of the things that connects us as neighbors. In our own way, each one of us is a giver and receiver." So I think each one of us has to ask ourselves, what does that mean for us as people of faith? If we really want to treat our neighbors the way we want to be treated, what does that call forth from us? And what should we be doing? I don't pretend to have the answer to that situation or any of the other situations that we have going on in the world. But I do think it's important for us to come to the realization that we are way more alike than we are different, that we have the same needs and wants and desires. And maybe it's just a matter of beginning to hear another story. Mr. Rogers, there's a little book of his favorite sayings, and one of those is by Mary Lou Komnacki, and it's this: there isn't anyone you couldn't love once you've heard their story. We just need to give ourselves an opportunity to hear their story, and I hope that we will commit ourselves to doing that.
Let's take the gauntlet and make goodness attractive in this so-called next millennium. That's the real job that we have. I'm not talking about Pollyannish kind of stuff. I'm talking about down-to-earth, actual goodness. People caring for each other in a myriad of ways. What changes the world? The only thing that ever really changes the world is when somebody gets the idea that love can abound and can be shared. You're doing a great job. But how do we make goodness attractive? By doing whatever we can to bring courage to those whose lives move near our own. By treating our neighbor at least as well as we treat ourselves.
It's you I like. It's not the things you wear, not the way you do your hair, but it's you I like. The way you are right now, the way down deep inside you, not the things that hide you, not your toys, they're just beside you. It's you I like. Every part of you, your skin, your eyes, your feelings, whether old or new. And I hope that you remember, even when you're feeling blue, it's you I like. It's you yourself, it's you. It's you I like. You I like. Every part of you, your skin, your eyes, your feelings, whether they're old or new. And I hope that you remember, even when you're feeling blue, that it's you I like. It's you yourself, it's you. Yes, it's you. Oh, yeah. It's you I like.
We're glad that you watched our service today. Please tune in next Sunday. At that service, I will be encouraging us all to love our faith community.